My name is Iris, a retired nurse of 67 from Portland. Yesterday was supposed to be the happiest day of my life watching my only son William marry Catherine. But fate had other plans when an emergency with a former patient delayed me. As I finally arrived at the venue, I heard laughter from the reception. Then I froze when Catherine said clearly, "It is a good thing he did not come." My mother always said toxic parents do not deserve to be at weddings. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button. The way this wedding celebration turned into a nightmare taught me the most painful lesson about family I have ever learned. I have spent most of my life taking care of others. As a nurse for 42 years, caring came naturally to me. But nothing compared to the love I had for my son William. I raised him alone after my husband Thomas died in a car accident when William was only 5 years old. We became everything to each other. I worked double shifts at Portland Memorial Hospital to provide for us, making sure William never felt the absence of his father too deeply. Those early years were tough but beautiful. I remember William waiting for me after school, his backpack always too big for his small frame, his smile lighting up even the darkest winter days in Oregon. We had our special rituals. Sunday pancakes, shaped like dinosaurs. Summer camping trips to Crater Lake. Late-night talks about everything from science projects to girl troubles as he grew older. William was always a sensitive, thoughtful boy. He excelled in school, particularly in mathematics and science. I still have the science fair trophies displayed in my living room, reminders of his brilliant mind and dedication. When he received a scholarship to attend University of Washington in Seattle, I was bursting with pride. Though it meant he would be living 3 hours away, I supported his dreams without hesitation. It was during his sophomore year that he met Catherine. She was studying business administration, ambitious, and focused on her career. When William first brought her home during Thanksgiving break, I tried my best to welcome her into our small family. I prepared a special dinner with all of William's favorites, hoping to make her feel comfortable. Catherine was polite, but somewhat distant. I attributed it to nerves at meeting her boyfriend's mother for the first time. Over the next 4 years, as their relationship grew serious, I noticed subtle changes in William. Our weekly phone calls became less frequent. When I visited Seattle, he always seemed to have prior commitments that limited our time together. Catherine was usually present during our interactions, often answering questions directed at William or steering conversations away from family memories. Still, I respected their relationship. When William called to announce their engagement 2 years after graduation, I was genuinely happy for them. He sounded excited, more animated than he had been in months. I immediately offered to help with wedding planning, envisioning a beautiful celebration that would honor both families. But the planning process quickly revealed the growing distance between us. Catherine and her mother Beverly took control of every detail. My suggestions for including some of our family traditions were politely acknowledged, then promptly ignored. When I offered to host the rehearsal dinner, Beverly insisted it should be at her country club instead. The invitations became a particular point of concern. 3 months before the wedding, William mentioned they had sent them out. 2 months passed, and I still had not received mine. When I casually asked about it during a phone call, William seemed confused, saying Catherine had handled the guest list and mailings. He promised to check with her. My invitation finally arrived just 2 days before the wedding. The postmark showed it had been mailed only 3 days earlier. Inside was a handwritten note from Catherine, apologizing for the oversight. Something felt wrong, but I dismissed my concerns as pre-wedding stress affecting everyone. The most important thing was being there for my son on his special day. The morning of the wedding arrived with unexpected complications. As I was preparing to leave for the 4 o'clock ceremony, my phone rang. It was Elaine, a former patient who had become a dear friend after I helped her through a difficult cancer treatment. She was experiencing severe symptoms and feared her cancer had returned. She lived alone and had no family nearby. The panic in her voice told me she needed immediate help. I called William to explain the situation, but the call went straight to voicemail. I left a message explaining I might be running late for the ceremony but would absolutely make the reception. I then tried Catherine and got the same result. Finally, I called William's best friend Jacob, who assured me he would let William know about the delay. After taking Elaine to the emergency room and waiting until her sister could arrive from Vancouver, I rushed to change into my dress. By then, I was already running 90 minutes behind schedule. To make matters worse, a major accident on Interstate 5 created a traffic nightmare. As I sat in gridlocked traffic watching the minutes tick by, I called everyone again. No one answered. By the time I arrived at the Lakeside Gardens venue, it was 7:30. The ceremony had long finished, and the reception was in full swing. Despite everything, I felt a surge of hope. I had missed seeing my son get married, but I could still share in their celebration. I smoothed my navy blue dress, checked my makeup in the car mirror, and grabbed the special gift I had brought. It was a gold pocket watch that had belonged to William's father, along with a check that represented most of my retirement savings. I wanted them to have a strong start in their married life. As I approached the venue's side entrance, eager to finally join the celebration, I had no idea that what I was about to overhear would change everything I thought I knew about my family. The Lakeside Gardens venue glowed with string lights that reflected off the water. I could hear music and laughter drifting from the main reception area as I made my way up the stone path in my uncomfortable heels. My navy blue dress, chosen carefully months ago with the help of my friend Dorothy, felt tight after the stressful day. Still, I had applied fresh lipstick and fixed my silver hair in the car, determined to look presentable for the wedding photos we would hopefully still take. As I neared the side entrance, I slowed my pace to catch my breath. That is when I heard the distinct sound of Catherine's voice coming from the outdoor smoking area just around the corner. "It is a good thing he did not come," she said, followed by laughter. My mother always said toxic parents do not deserve to be at weddings. I froze mid-step. Surely she could not be talking about me. Perhaps there was another difficult parent situation I did not know about. "I still cannot believe you managed to delay her invitation until the last minute," a woman's voice replied. I recognized it as Beverly, Catherine's mother. "That was brilliant, Catherine. No one can blame you if the mail is slow." My heart began pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. They were talking about me. They had deliberately delayed my invitation, hoping I would not attend. "I feel a little bad." I heard William say, his voice softer than the others. "She is still my mom." William Catherine's voice took on a sharper edge. "We talked about this. Remember how she tried to control everything about our engagement party? How she calls you 3 times a week. Normal mothers do not suffocate their adult children like that." I stood paralyzed, unable to move forward or retreat. 3 calls a week was suffocating. I had actually reduced how often I called, thinking I was respecting their space. "Your mother is right," Beverly chimed in. "I have watched how she tries to manipulate you with those stories about all her sacrifices. Single mothers often use guilt to control their children. It is textbook emotional manipulation." I felt as though someone had punched me in the stomach. Sacrifices I had never once used our past as a weapon against William. I had shared stories of our life together because they were precious memories, not to make him feel guilty. The way she inserted herself into the wedding planning was the last straw, Catherine continued. Trying to change our venue to be closer to her house. Suggesting those tacky family traditions. "I am just glad we can enjoy our wedding day without the drama," William replied, his voice slightly slurred from what I assumed was champagne. "You were right about blocking her number today. It was peaceful." Blocked my number. That explained why none of my calls had gone through. Not even to let them know I would be late because I was helping a cancer patient. The realization that my own son had deliberately cut off communication on his wedding day sent a wave of nausea through me. "I just hope she does not show up at all," Catherine said. "The reception is almost half over anyway. We can tell everyone she had a health emergency or something." Speaking of which, Beverly added we should get back inside before people start asking questions. "Catherine, you and William should do the cake cutting soon." I heard chairs scraping and knew they were about to round the corner where I stood. Panic surged through me as I quickly retreated down the path and hid behind a large decorative planter filled with ferns. From my hiding spot, I watched as Catherine, William, and Beverly walked past, laughing about something new, completely unaware of my presence. Catherine looked beautiful in her white gown, her dark hair elegantly styled. William was handsome in his tuxedo, looking so much like his father it made my heart ache. They appeared happy, carefree. Without me? Once they disappeared inside, I remained frozen in place, the gift bag with the pocket watch and check hanging limply from my fingers. What should I do? Storm in and confront them? Create the very drama they had accused me of? Or leave quietly preserving what little dignity I had left? In that moment, the decades of putting William first made the decision for me. I would not ruin his wedding day, even if he and Catherine had deliberately tried to exclude me. I turned away from the glowing venue and walked slowly back to my car, invisible to the celebrating guests inside. The drive home was a blur of tears and confusion. Streetlights smeared across my vision as I tried to make sense of what I had heard. Had I truly been such a terrible mother? Was I controlling and manipulative without realizing it? Or had Catherine systematically turned my son against me? When I finally arrived home, I sat in my driveway for nearly 20 minutes, unable to summon the energy to go inside. My empty house had never felt more lonely. The special outfit I had chosen so carefully now felt like a costume from a play where I had been abruptly written out of the script. I finally went inside, carefully hanging up the dress I would never wear again. The gift bag I placed on the kitchen counter, its contents, now a painful reminder of a relationship that perhaps existed only in my imagination. As I washed away my makeup, I barely recognized the devastated woman staring back at me from the bathroom mirror. In the space of one evening, I had lost not only my invitation to my son's wedding, but possibly my son himself. Sleep was impossible that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Catherine's words echoing in my mind. "It is a good thing he did not come." The casual cruelty of it stabbed me afresh each time. Around 2 a.m, I gave up trying to rest and wandered through my small house in my robe, feeling like a ghost in my own life. I found myself in the spare bedroom where I kept most of William's childhood mementos. The closet still contained boxes of his school projects, sports trophies, and report cards. I pulled down a photo album from the top shelf, its cover slightly dusty from lack of use. Inside were photographs documenting William's life from infancy through high school graduation. There he was as a toddler, proudly holding up a finger painting. William at 7 missing his 2 front teeth in a school picture. William at 10 dressed as a scientist for Halloween, because he was going through what he called his Einstein phase. William at 16, awkwardly handsome in his prom tuxedo. Each photo triggered memories of our life together. The night he had scarlet fever and I stayed awake monitoring his temperature, terrified of complications because we could not afford hospital bills. The time I worked through Christmas Eve so I could buy him the telescope he wanted. The baseball games I never missed despite exhausting hospital shifts. The college application essays I helped him proofread late into the night. Were these the actions of a controlling, toxic mother, or of a woman who loved her child fiercely and did everything possible to give him opportunities? As dawn broke, I found myself scrolling through social media on my tablet, something I rarely did. Catherine had posted wedding preparation photos the previous day. I had not been tagged in any, of course. Reading the comments, I discovered a post from months earlier where Catherine had vaguely referenced dealing with controlling in-laws and received sympathy from her friends. In-laws, not mother-in-law. As if my existence needed to be further diminished by making me part of a nameless group. My phone began ringing around 9 a.m. It was Dorothy, my closest friend. "Iris, where were you yesterday? I saved you a seat at the ceremony, but you never showed." The concern in her voice nearly broke me. I considered telling her everything but found I could not. Despite what I had overheard, I could not bring myself to tarnish William's image in front of others. I had an emergency with Elaine, I explained, which was at least partially true. By the time I got her situated, I had missed everything. "You should have called me," Dorothy said. "I would have come to get you." My phone died. I lied, unable to admit my own son had blocked my number. "How was the wedding?" I listened as Dorothy described the beautiful ceremony, the touching vows, the elegant reception. She mentioned several times that people had asked about me, which provided a small measure of comfort. At least some people had noticed my absence. William seemed a bit distracted whenever someone mentioned you, Dorothy added. I thought maybe you two had argued. Nothing like that, I assured her, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. I am sure he was just overwhelmed by the day. After hanging up, more calls came in from other friends who had attended. I gave them all the same sanitized version of events. With each retelling, I felt myself detaching from the reality of what had happened, as if I were discussing someone else's disappointment rather than my own heartbreak. Around noon, I finally received a text message from William. Where were you yesterday? The casual tone stunned me. No apology for blocking my calls. No concern about why I might have missed his wedding, just a question that put all responsibility on me. I stared at those 5 words for a long time, drafting and deleting multiple responses. What could I say that I knew they had deliberately tried to exclude me? That I had overheard them mocking me? That I knew he had blocked my number? In the end, I typed I had an emergency with a former patient. I tried calling but could not get through. I will explain everything tomorrow at brunch. The post-wedding brunch was scheduled for 11 the next morning, at the Garden View restaurant. It was primarily for out-of-town guests and close family. I had not planned to attend after what I had overheard, but something had shifted inside me during that sleepless night. For decades, I had prioritized William's feelings above my own. I had accepted the growing distance between us, making excuses for his behavior and Catherine's coldness. I had diminished myself to avoid being the controlling mother they apparently thought I was. But the woman who had raised a child alone while building a nursing career was still inside me. The woman who had faced countless hardships without breaking was still there. And that woman deserved better than to be erased from her own son's life without even defending herself. As I finally crawled into bed when exhaustion overtook me, I made a decision. I would attend the brunch tomorrow. Not to create drama or ruin their celebration, but to stand in my truth. To be present. To show that while they could exclude me from the wedding, they could not make me disappear entirely. For the first time since hearing those devastating words at the wedding venue, I felt something other than pain. It was a quiet, steady resolve. Whatever happened next, I would face it with the dignity I had earned through a lifetime of putting others first. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, I would finally put myself first. The morning of the post-wedding brunch dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the emotional storm inside me. I had managed perhaps 3 hours of broken sleep, but as I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, I made a conscious decision not to appear as devastated as I felt. I showered and washed my hair, taking extra time to blow-dry it into the soft waves that framed my face most flatteringly. I applied makeup, carefully concealing the dark circles under my eyes. From my closet, I selected a coral-colored dress I had purchased for my retirement party 2 years earlier. The color brought warmth to my complexion, and the classic cut flattered my figure without trying too hard to appear younger than my 67 years. Around my neck, I fastened a simple pearl pendant that Thomas had given me on our 5th anniversary. It was both a talisman of strength and a reminder that I had survived devastating loss before. William had not responded to my text from yesterday. I took that as neither confirmation nor rejection of my presence at the brunch. In truth, it did not matter. I was going regardless. I arrived at the Garden View restaurant precisely at 11. The hostess directed me to the private room reserved for the wedding party. Through the glass doors, I could see about 30 people already seated at several round tables. Catherine and William sat at the center table with their parents. Catherine's parents both looked to be in their mid-60s, expensively dressed and groomed. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and pushed open the door. The reaction was immediate. Conversations stuttered to a halt as heads turned in my direction. Catherine's face registered shock before quickly transforming into a tight smile. William looked genuinely startled, his fork frozen halfway to his mouth. Dorothy, seated at a side table, broke the awkward silence by calling out, "Iris, come sit with us." She patted the empty chair beside her. As I made my way across the room, I felt Beverly's cold gaze following me. Catherine leaned over to whisper something to William, whose expression shifted from surprise to discomfort. I greeted Dorothy and the others at the table with warm smiles, accepting their sympathetic comments about missing the wedding with gracious nods. "We missed you yesterday," said Frank, Dorothy's husband. "William said you had some emergency." Before I could respond, Catherine's voice carried across the room. "Yes, we were all so worried when Iris did not show up for the ceremony. William was devastated. We're not you, honey." All eyes turned to me, and I realized Catherine was attempting to control the narrative, painting me as the neglectful mother who had abandoned her son on his important day. "I had every intention of being there," I replied, my voice calm, but carrying clearly through the room. My former patient, Elaine, had a medical emergency and needed immediate help. She feared her cancer had returned. Murmurs of understanding rippled through the guests. Many knew I was a retired nurse and that I maintained relationships with former patients. I tried calling William several times to let him know I would be late. I continued looking directly at my son. I left voicemails and sent texts, but I could not seem to get through to anyone. William shifted uncomfortably in his seat, avoiding my gaze. Catherine's smile remained fixed, but a flush crept up her neck. "How strange," Beverly interjected. "Cell service must have been spotty at the venue." "Perhaps," I agreed mildly, though it seems everyone else was able to make and receive calls just fine. A tense silence followed. Catherine's father cleared his throat and attempted to change the subject by proposing a toast to the newlyweds. People raised their glasses half-heartedly, the atmosphere now distinctly uncomfortable. As brunch was served, I maintained polite conversation with those at my table, while acutely aware of the frequent glances from the head table. About halfway through the meal, William finally approached, crouching beside my chair. "Mom," he said quietly, "I did not know you were coming today." "I mentioned it in my text yesterday," I replied. "You did not respond." He had the grace to look embarrassed. "Right. Things have been hectic." "I imagine so," I said. "Your wedding looked beautiful from the photos Dorothy showed me." An awkward pause followed. "About yesterday," he began. "Why did not you call Jacob when you could not reach me? He could have let us know." "I did call Jacob," I said simply. "He assured me he would tell you I was running late." William's expression changed confusion, replacing discomfort. He never said anything. From across the room, I noticed Catherine watching our interaction intently. "Perhaps you should ask Jacob about that," I suggested. He was quite clear that he would pass along the message. As if on cue, Jacob approached our table with a plate of food. "Iris, I was so worried when you never showed up yesterday. Did Elaine's situation resolve okay?" William turned to his best friend. "You knew my mom was going to be late." Jacob looked confused. "Of course. I told you right before the ceremony that she had an emergency with a former patient but would try to make it for the reception." "You never told me that," William insisted. "I absolutely did," Jacob frowned. "You were with Catherine and her mom. Catherine said she would make sure you got the message." William's face paled slightly as he looked back toward his new wife, who was now engaged in animated conversation with her mother, pointedly ignoring our group. "I should get back," William muttered, rising to his feet. "We will talk more later, Mom." As he walked away, Dorothy squeezed my hand under the table. She had witnessed the entire exchange and understood more than I had told her. The brunch continued with increasing tension. I noticed several guests watching the dynamics between me, William, and Catherine with curious expressions. Catherine's attempts to appear the perfect bride were undermined by her obvious agitation whenever William and I interacted. As dessert was being served, Catherine suddenly appeared beside me, her expression a mask of concern. "Iris," she said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "William and I were just devastated that you missed our special day. Why did not you call me when you could not reach him? I would have made sure someone picked you up." The calculated nature of her approach, the public performance of caring, suddenly clarified everything for me. This was not about miscommunication or wedding day stress. This was deliberate. "That is interesting, Catherine," I replied, matching her volume but keeping my tone conversational. "I did call you. Multiple times. But like William's phone, yours seemed to be unavailable." Her smile faltered slightly. "Oh, I had my phone with me all day." "I am sure you did," I agreed pleasantly. "Just as I am sure William's phone was with him when I called 6 times and sent 3 text messages about being delayed due to a medical emergency." People at neighboring tables had gone quiet listening to our exchange. "Well," Catherine said, her voice slightly higher than normal. "There must have been some technical issue." "Yes," I nodded. "I believe that technical issue is commonly called blocking a caller." Catherine's face flushed completely now. Without another word, she turned and walked briskly back to the head table where she immediately engaged William in intense conversation. I excused myself shortly after needing a moment alone. In the restroom, I splashed cool water on my wrists and took several deep breaths. The confrontation had been necessary but draining. As I was about to leave, Beverly entered, her expression thunderous. "I do not know what game you are playing," she hissed, "but you are ruining Catherine and William's first day as a married couple." I met her gaze in the mirror. "I am simply here to celebrate my son's marriage, Beverly. That is what mothers do." "Some mothers know when to step back," she retorted. "Catherine tells me you have been suffocating William for years." "Interesting perspective," I said calmly. "I wonder if calling my son 3 times a week and wanting to be included in his wedding planning really qualifies as suffocation." Beverly's eyes narrowed. "Catherine says you were constantly interfering, trying to change their plans, making everything about you." "Did she also mention deliberately delaying my invitation until 2 days before the wedding?" I asked quietly. "Or suggesting it was good I did not attend?" Beverly's expression shifted momentarily before she regained control. "I do not know what you think you heard, but you are mistaken." "I heard everything, Beverly. Last night outside the venue. Every word about toxic parents not deserving to be at weddings. Every word about blocking my number. Every word." The color drained from her face. For a moment, she seemed at a loss for words. Then her expression hardened again. "If you heard all that and still showed up today, you are even more selfish than Catherine said." With that parting shot, she stormed out of the restroom. I remained a few minutes longer, gathering my strength. What had begun as a simple appearance at brunch had evolved into something far more significant. The truth was coming to light, and while it was painful, it was also strangely liberating. For the first time in years, I was seeing the dynamics between William, Catherine, and myself with complete clarity. When I returned to the dining room, the atmosphere had noticeably shifted. People were speaking in hushed tones, glancing between me and the head table. William was engaged in what appeared to be a tense conversation with Catherine and her parents. Jacob caught my eye from across the room and gave me a small, supportive nod. As I rejoined Dorothy and the others, I knew the post-wedding celebration had indeed turned into something of a nightmare, but not in the way Catherine had planned. The truth, once exposed, had its own power, and I was finally ready to reclaim mine. The brunch dissolved into awkward clusters of conversation. Some guests made excuses to leave early, sensing the undercurrents of tension. I remained at my table, participating in conversation but acutely aware of the frequent glances from the head table. Catherine and her parents appeared to be having an intense discussion with William, whose body language grew increasingly defensive. As people began to disperse, I gathered my purse and prepared to leave. Dorothy hugged me tightly, whispering, "Call me later. I want to hear everything." I was nearly to the exit when William approached, his expression troubled. "Mom, can we talk privately for a minute?" I nodded, following him to a small seating area in the restaurant's lobby. We sat on opposite ends of a small sofa, the distance between us symbolic of our relationship. "I want to apologize for yesterday," he began, his voice low. "I should have tried harder to reach you when you did not show up." The careful phrasing did not escape me. He was apologizing for not reaching out, not for blocking my calls or deliberately excluding me. "William, I said gently. Let us be honest with each other. I know what happened yesterday. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? I arrived at the venue during your reception, I explained. I was about to come in when I overheard a conversation between you, Catherine, and Beverly outside the side entrance. His face paled visibly. What conversation? I heard Catherine say it was good. I did not come. I heard Beverly congratulate her on delaying my invitation. I heard you agree that blocking my number had made the day more peaceful. William's expression cycled through shock, embarrassment, and guilt. Mom, Please do not deny it, I said quietly. I heard everything with my own ears. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar from his childhood that it made my heart ache. It was not like that. You do not understand the context. Then help me understand, I said. Help me understand why my son would deliberately exclude me from the most important day of his life. He sighed heavily. Catherine has been feeling overwhelmed by your presence in our relationship. She says you call too often, that you try to insert yourself into our decisions. 3 calls a week is overwhelming, I asked. Offering to help with wedding planning is inserting myself. It is more than that, he insisted, though he avoided my gaze. She feels you are always reminding me of our past, of all you did as a single mom. She thinks you use that to make me feel guilty when I do not include you. The accusation stung precisely because it was so far from the truth. William, I have never used our history as a weapon against you. Those are precious memories to me, not tools for manipulation. Maybe you do not see it that way, he said, but Catherine feels suffocated by your expectations. And what do you feel? I asked directly. He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. I feel caught in the middle. I love Catherine, and I want her to be happy. But you are my mother. Yet you chose to block my calls on your wedding day, I noted. You chose to celebrate my absence rather than wonder if something might be wrong when I did not arrive for the ceremony. Before he could respond, Catherine appeared, hovering nearby with obvious impatience. When William did not immediately acknowledge her, she approached. Is everything okay here? She asked, her voice honey-sweet, but her eyes cold as they met mine. William and I are having a private conversation, I replied calmly. Well, we need to start saying goodbye to the guests, she insisted, placing a proprietary hand on William's shoulder. Family photos in 15 minutes, remember. I will be there in a minute, William assured her. Mom and I need to finish talking. Catherine's smile tightened. The photographer charges by the hour, William. Everyone is waiting. The way she emphasized everyone made it clear I was not included in that group. William looked torn, and I saw in that moment how effectively Catherine had placed him in an impossible position. We can talk later, I said, rising from the sofa. Your guests are waiting. Actually, Catherine interjected. We have a private family gathering after this. Perhaps we could call you tomorrow. The deliberate exclusion was so blatant that even William looked uncomfortable. Catherine, my mom is family. Of course she is, Catherine backpedaled smoothly. I just meant with all the out-of-town relatives staying at the house, things will be chaotic. I had not been invited to this private family gathering either, another deliberate omission I was only now discovering. I understand, I said, keeping my dignity intact. You both have many obligations today. Catherine smiled triumphantly, believing she had won another round. But I was not finished. Before I go, though, there is something I need to say. I turned to face William fully. I raised you to be honest and compassionate. I taught you that family stands by each other through difficult times. Yesterday, when I was helping Elaine through a medical crisis, I believed I was living those values. I expected you would understand, as the son I raised, that sometimes we must put others' urgent needs before our own desires. William had the grace to look ashamed. Catherine's smile had disappeared completely. Instead, I continued. I discovered that my calls were blocked, my presence was mocked, and my absence was celebrated. That is not the son I raised. You are twisting things, Catherine interrupted. William and I were just trying to have a stress-free wedding day. By deliberately excluding his mother, I asked directly. You always make everything about you, Catherine snapped, her mask of politeness finally slipping. This was our day, not yours. William needed space from your constant emotional demands. Catherine, William warned, looking alarmed at her tone. But Catherine was fully committed now. No, William, she needs to hear this. Your mother has manipulated you with guilt for years. Every story about her sacrifices, every reference to raising you alone, it is all designed to keep you tied to her. My mother warned me about women like her who use their children as emotional crutches. I remained calm despite the vicious attack. Is that what you think love looks like, Catherine? Scorekeeping and resentment? Because that is not how I raised my son, and that is not the marriage I hope you two will have. By now, our confrontation had drawn attention. Beverly and her husband had approached, along with several other guests who had lingered in the lobby. What is going on here? Beverly demanded, immediately taking a protective stance beside Catherine. Just a family discussion, I replied evenly. Mother Catherine said, her voice suddenly trembling theatrically. Iris is trying to ruin our wedding weekend. She is upset about missing the ceremony, and now she is making a scene. The calculated nature of her performance was breathtaking. In an instant, she had transformed from aggressor to victim, complete with glistening eyes. Beverly immediately put an arm around her daughter. This is exactly what we were afraid would happen, she said accusingly to me. You could not stand not being the center of attention. William looked increasingly distressed. This is getting out of hand. Everyone needs to calm down. I am perfectly calm, I assured him, and I have no interest in creating a scene. I simply wanted the truth acknowledged. The truth, Beverly scoffed, is that you have been smothering William for years. Catherine has been a saint putting up with your interference. Jacob, who had been watching from nearby, suddenly stepped forward. Actually, that is not entirely accurate. All eyes turned to him in surprise. What do you mean? William asked. Jacob looked uncomfortable, but determined. I have been your best friend since college, Will. I have seen how things developed with Catherine. She has been trying to separate you from your mom from the beginning. Catherine's face flushed with anger. That is ridiculous. Is it? Jacob challenged. What about when you convinced William that his mom was overstepping by offering to host your engagement party? Or when you deliberately scheduled wedding planning sessions when you knew Iris would be working? Or when you told wedding planner not to contact her directly? William turned to Catherine with a questioning look. Is that true? He is exaggerating, Catherine insisted. I was just trying to make things simpler. Simpler by excluding William's mother, Jacob asked pointedly. A murmur ran through the small crowd that had gathered. Catherine's carefully constructed narrative was beginning to unravel. I think everyone needs to remember this is William and Catherine's special weekend, Beverly interjected desperately. All this drama is unnecessary. I agree, I said, surprising everyone, which is why I am going to leave now. William, when you are ready to have an honest conversation, you know where to find me. I turned to go, maintaining my composure despite the emotional turmoil inside. Mom, wait, William called after me. When I paused, he looked torn between following me and staying with his new wife. The fact that it was even a difficult choice told me everything I needed to know about the state of our relationship. It is okay, I said softly. You have guests waiting. We will talk another time. As I walked toward the exit, I heard Catherine's urgent whispers to William and Beverly's louder attempts to redirect everyone's attention. But I also noticed several of William's friends and our family friends watching me with new understanding in their eyes. Outside in the parking lot, the bright sunshine felt at odds with the emotional storm I had just weathered. Yet, despite the pain, I felt lighter somehow. The truth, however, uncomfortable, had finally been spoken aloud. What happened next would depend on William and the man he chose to be, but I had reclaimed my own dignity in the process. As I drove away from the Garden View restaurant, I realized that the confrontation had been inevitable. Some relationships could only heal after the wound was fully exposed to the light. Whether William and I would heal remained to be seen, but at least now we were dealing with reality rather than the careful fiction Catherine had constructed. The days following the confrontation at the brunch unfolded in unexpected ways. I returned home to find several messages from wedding guests expressing concern and support. Dorothy called that evening for a full account of what had happened after she left. Frank had apparently overheard much of the lobby confrontation and filled her in on some details. "The whole thing is shameful," Dorothy declared, "the way Catherine and her mother treated you after all you have done for William. And him allowing it, Thomas would be so disappointed." Though the reference to my late husband stung, I could not disagree. "William is a grown man making his own choices," I said. "Even if they are not the ones I hoped he would make." "Well, you should know people are talking," Dorothy continued. "Beverly has been calling everyone trying to do damage control, but Jacob's comments made quite an impression. Apparently, he told several people afterward that Catherine has been isolating William for years." I had not expected Jacob's support, and felt grateful for his willingness to speak the truth despite the awkward circumstances. On Monday morning, 3 days after the wedding, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. I opened it to find Jacob standing on my porch looking somewhat uncomfortable. "I hope it is okay that I stopped by," he said. "I wanted to check on you and explain a few things." I invited him in and made coffee while he sat nervously at my kitchen table. As I placed a mug in front of him, he began to speak. "I should have said something sooner," he admitted. "I saw what was happening between William and Catherine, how she was gradually separating him from you and his other friends, but I did not want to interfere." "It was not your responsibility," I assured him. "Maybe not, but William has been my best friend since freshman year. I knew something was wrong when Catherine convinced him to change their honeymoon plans from Italy to the Bahamas, because it was closer to her parents' vacation home." This was news to me. William had always dreamed of visiting Italy, saving for years to make the trip a reality. Jacob continued describing how Catherine had systematically isolated William, always under the guise of creating healthy boundaries. How she had convinced him that his weekly basketball games with friends were taking time away from their relationship. How she monitored his phone calls and text messages, often responding on his behalf. The wedding planning was the worst, Jacob revealed. Catherine deliberately scheduled appointments when she knew you would be volunteering at the hospital. She told the wedding planner you were difficult and should be kept out of major decisions. My coffee grew cold as Jacob shared more revelations. How Catherine had told William I had criticized her dress choice when I had never even seen it. How she had intercepted the handwritten note I had sent with suggestions for the ceremony, telling William I had sent a list of demands instead. The invitation delay was deliberate, Jacob confirmed. I overheard Catherine telling her mother they were waiting until the last minute to send yours, hoping you might not be able to arrange to attend. Though none of this surprised me, after what I had overheard at the wedding, having it confirmed by someone else made the betrayal feel freshly painful. "What about William?" I asked finally. "How could he not see what was happening?" Jacob sighed heavily. "Catherine is very good at making her controlling behavior seem like love. She would isolate him, then comfort him for feeling lonely. Create problems with you, then console him about his difficult mother. It happened so gradually that William did not notice the pattern." Before leaving, Jacob revealed one more significant detail. "William does not know I am here, but he has been asking questions since the brunch." Catherine's mask slipped pretty dramatically, and I think he is starting to see things more clearly. The next day, a large envelope arrived by courier. Inside was a letter from my attorney explaining that the wedding gift check I had written had been deposited and then immediately transferred to an account solely in Catherine's name. There was also documentation showing Catherine had attempted to have William's name added to my house deed without my knowledge, claiming it was an inheritance planning discussion. The attorney, Martha Goldstein, had been a friend since nursing school and had handled my legal affairs for decades. She had immediately flagged the unusual activities and blocked the property transfer attempt. "I was going to call you about this next week," Martha said when I phoned her, "but given the circumstances with the wedding, I thought you should know immediately. Someone was clearly attempting to access your assets through William." This revelation shifted something fundamental in my understanding of the situation. Catherine's isolation of William had not been merely emotional control, but potentially financial exploitation as well. With Martha's guidance, I made a decision to redirect the wedding gift money into a trust that William could only access independently. It would be there for him if he needed it, but protected from Catherine's control. Word of these developments spread quickly through our social circle. Several of William's childhood friends reached out to express concern about his relationship. Two of his colleagues from the engineering firm where he worked called to check on me, revealing that Catherine had been pressuring William to seek employment at her father's company instead, where she also worked. By Thursday, less than a week after the wedding, Beverly was hosting a recovery brunch for wedding guests still in town. I learned through Dorothy, who had declined to attend, that the event had become awkward when several guests asked pointed questions about my absence from the wedding ceremony. Beverly tried to imply you had chosen not to attend, Dorothy reported. But Jacob spoke up again, mentioning how your calls had been blocked. Apparently, one of Catherine's cousins then admitted Catherine had told her months ago that she was working on making sure you had minimal involvement in the wedding. The narrative Catherine and Beverly had carefully constructed was unraveling thread by thread. What they had intended as a triumphant celebration of their social status had become tarnished by questions and revelations. On Friday morning, a week after the wedding, I received my first direct contact from William since the brunch confrontation. His text was brief. "Can we talk alone?" I responded simply, "Yes." "When?" He suggested coming to my house that afternoon. I agreed, my emotions a complex mixture of hope and caution. William arrived looking exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and a tension in his shoulders I recognized from his college exam periods. I invited him in without comment, leading him to the living room where we had shared so many conversations throughout his life. Coffee I offered, maintaining a calm exterior despite my racing heart. "Please," he nodded, then added hesitantly, "if it is not too much trouble." The awkward formality between us was painful, but I simply prepared the coffee as I had thousands of times before, giving us both a moment to gather our thoughts. When I returned with 2 mugs, William was looking at the family photos on the mantel. He accepted the coffee with a quiet thank you before finally meeting my eyes. "I have been doing a lot of thinking," he began. "About what happened at the wedding and at the brunch. About what Jacob said." I remained silent, allowing him space to continue. "Catherine and I have been struggling this week," he admitted. "She is very upset about how things unfolded at the brunch. She says everyone is taking your side unfairly." "And what do you think?" I asked, gently. He set his mug down, running both hands through his hair in the familiar gesture that signaled deep distress. "I think I have been blind to a lot of things." Jacob showed me text messages Catherine sent him before the wedding, asking him not to mention if you called. He also told me about conversations where Catherine specifically planned to minimize your involvement. My heart ached for his obvious pain, but I recognized this moment of clarity was necessary, however difficult. "Mom," he continued, his voice cracking slightly, "did you really try to call me 6 times on the wedding day?" "Yes," I confirmed. "And I left voicemails explaining about Elaine's emergency. I also texted 3 times. "I never saw any of those," he said, his expression troubled. "Catherine had my phone for most of the day. She said she was managing congratulation messages for me." Another piece of the puzzle fell into place. Not only had my number been blocked, but Catherine had actively intercepted communications. "William," I said carefully, "I need to ask you something important. Did you know Catherine was trying to have your name added to my house deed?" His expression of genuine shock answered before his words did. "What? No. Absolutely not. Why would she do that?" I explained what Martha had discovered watching, as confusion gave way to understanding on his face. "She told me she was handling some paperwork for our joint accounts," he said slowly. "I signed several things without really reading them. I trusted her." The conversation continued for hours, painful revelations alternating with moments of clarity. William described how Catherine had gradually isolated him, always with seemingly reasonable explanations. How comments I had made were reframed as criticisms. How his time with friends was portrayed as neglect of their relationship. "I keep thinking about what you said at the brunch," he admitted. "About how you raised me to be honest and compassionate. I do not recognize the person I have become these past few years. As evening approached, William received multiple texts and calls from Catherine, each more demanding than the last. He silenced his phone after the fifth call. "She wants to know where I am," he explained. "She expected me home an hour ago." "And what will you tell her?" I asked. He looked at me with an expression that reminded me of the thoughtful boy he had once been. "The truth, that I am talking with my mother, that I have a lot of thinking to do about our relationship." When he finally left, our relationship remained fragile, a delicate thing requiring careful rebuilding. But for the first time since overhearing those devastating words at the wedding venue, I felt hope that my son might find his way back to the values that had once defined him. As I watched him drive away, I recognized that the wedding celebration truly had turned into a nightmare, though not in the way Catherine had feared. Her carefully constructed illusion of control had begun to crumble, revealing the manipulation beneath. Whether their marriage would survive, this revelation remained to be seen, but at least now William was beginning to see clearly. And for myself, though the pain of betrayal remained, I had found an unexpected strength in standing up for my dignity. The woman who had raised a child alone, built a nursing career, and faced countless challenges, had not disappeared after all. She had simply been waiting for the moment to emerge once more. 6 months have passed since William's wedding day, that painful moment when I stood outside the venue and heard my absence being celebrated. Looking back now from the peaceful vantage point of my sunlit garden, I can see how that moment of heartbreak became the catalyst for profound change and healing. The weeks following our confrontation at the post-wedding brunch were difficult for everyone involved. William moved out of the house he shared with Catherine just 2 weeks after their honeymoon, taking a temporary apartment downtown while he sorted things out. Catherine's response was a campaign of emotional manipulation that included tears, threats, and eventually involving both sets of parents. I maintained a respectful distance, allowing William to navigate his new marriage without my influence. This was his journey, his decision to make. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding my own life, which I realized had become too centered around my role as William's mother. Dorothy convinced me to join her watercolor class at the community center, something I had always wanted to try but never made time for. I reconnected with former colleagues from the hospital, establishing a monthly lunch group that quickly became a highlight of my calendar. I even started volunteering at a local literacy program, teaching adults to read, finding unexpected joy in helping others achieve independence. 3 months after the wedding, William and Catherine attempted counseling. He shared with me that the therapist had identified concerning patterns of isolation and control in their relationship. Catherine, he said, refused to attend after the 3rd session, claiming the therapist was biased against her. Our own relationship began to heal through careful, honest conversations. William first reached out via text messages, short but meaningful exchanges that acknowledged birthdays and holidays. Then came phone calls, initially awkward but gradually warming as we cautiously rebuilt trust. The first time we met for coffee at a neutral cafe halfway between our homes, the conversation was stilted but civil. By the 3rd meeting, something of our old comfort had returned, though the shadow of what had happened still lingered between us. "I should have seen it," William admitted during one of these conversations. "Looking back, the signs were so clear. The way she criticized you for the smallest things, how she would reframe your offers of help as interference, the constant, subtle comments about unhealthy attachments between mothers and sons. Manipulation is often only visible in retrospect," I told him, "especially when it comes from someone you love and trust." I think I was afraid, he confessed, staring into his coffee cup. "After Dad died, you and I became so close. Part of me worried that was somehow wrong, that I needed to create more separation to be a normal adult." Catherine sensed that insecurity and exploited it. This insight represented significant growth on William's part, an ability to examine his own vulnerabilities without shame. It was in these moments I saw most clearly the thoughtful boy I had raised emerging once more in the man before me. 4 months after the wedding, William filed for an annulment. Catherine contested it vigorously, especially after learning about the trust I had established with the wedding gift money. Her parents hired an aggressive attorney who attempted to portray William as unstable and influenced by his controlling mother. The legal proceedings became unexpectedly public when Catherine's cousin, the same one who had confirmed Catherine's plans to exclude me from the wedding, came forward with text messages and emails documenting Catherine's deliberate manipulation. These included explicit statements about her plans to separate William from his mother's influence and to access his family's assets. The annulment was granted 5 months after the wedding. William emerged from the courthouse looking simultaneously exhausted and relieved. "It is over," he told me simply when I met him for dinner that evening. "How do you feel?" I asked. "Like I can breathe again," he replied. "Like I am waking up from a dream where I slowly became someone I do not recognize." This awakening had not been without cost. William had lost friends who sided with Catherine. His relationship with her family, particularly Beverly, had disintegrated into bitter accusations. Even some of our extended family members questioned the rapid dissolution of the marriage, suggesting he had not tried hard enough. Through it all, I maintained my own boundaries, supporting William, without trying to direct his decisions. This new balance represented my own growth. My understanding that loving my son did not mean managing his life or solving his problems. Last week, William came to Sunday dinner at my house for the first time since before the wedding. As we sat on the patio afterward, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, he turned to me with an expression of quiet revelation. "You know what I have realized, Mom, love does not isolate. Real love connects you to others. It expands your world rather than shrinking it." His words crystallized the profound lesson we had both learned through this painful journey. True love, whether between parent and child, friends, or partners, strengthens connections rather than severing them. It builds bridges rather than walls. It enhances freedom rather than restricting it. I have forgiven Catherine not for her sake but for my own peace of mind. Carrying anger would only continue to give her power over my happiness. Similarly, I have forgiven William for his role in my exclusion from his wedding. We are all capable of losing our way, of being less than our best selves when under the influence of manipulation and fear. The trust I established with the wedding gift money remains intact, available to William when he is ready to buy a home or pursue other dreams. It stands as a symbol of my unconditional love, one that supports without controlling, that gives without expectation of return. As for myself, I have discovered a renewed sense of purpose and joy in my own life. The woman who defined herself primarily as William's mother for so many years has reclaimed her identity as Iris, a person of value and complexity in her own right. My relationship with William is stronger now, built on mutual respect rather than dependence or obligation. The painful lesson of the wedding day, of hearing my absence celebrated by those who should have welcomed me, ultimately led to profound healing and growth for both of us. Like the phoenix of mythology, something new and beautiful has risen from the ashes of betrayal and pain. If you have experienced similar family betrayal or manipulation, know that healing is possible. Standing in your truth, maintaining your dignity, and focusing on your own well-being creates the foundation for authentic relationships built on mutual respect. Have you ever had to rebuild trust with someone you love? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more reflections from my journey. Remember that every ending, even painful ones, creates space for new beginnings. Thank you for listening, and I wish you courage and clarity on your own path.